our premier session of Stewardship Academy, session number 3. And so I appreciate you all hanging in here as we get to the busy time of year with Holy Week and Easter, well, Palm Sunday through next week. I know is really busy. So it's good we can conclude things today for our class. Here at the beginning, I want to introduce to you Jim Eads. He is the CEO of the United Methodist Credit Union. And I just wanted you to put a name and face with him. And I've invited him to come and just say hello and share a couple of minutes. So Jim, it's all yours.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So
we need to go up in volume a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you can...
Is that better? Is that any better?
I can hear you. Can everybody hear all right? Okay, we're good. Yeah.
So Bert wanted to put a face with a name. I'm sorry, this is the face you're stuck with. I was going to put a Clint Eastwood face up there, but I thought that might be a little much. I want to welcome all of you to this session, and Bert does a really good job for us in outreach to churches, because our main mission at the United Methodist Credit Union is helping pastors and helping churches. We also work with laity and whatnot, but really about, I would say, between 2/3 and maybe as high as 80% of our work is with churches and pastors. And so we really, we want to help you any way we can. We're a complete nonprofit started by the Virginia Conference of the United Methodist Church. And we just want to thank you for taking advantage of Bert's program here. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. Also, if any of you are members, thank you for being a member. If you're not a member, I'd sure like you to join our credit union. It costs you nothing. In fact, we pay you $5 to join. We put $5 in your account. So we would love to have you join and find out some other ways that we can help you. Like I said, we do a lot of work with pastors and churches. And recently, we've done a lot of work with churches kind of coming out of the pandemic with a lot of unique problems. We made a whole lot of these PPP loans to churches in the past couple of years, but now that money's gone. Churches are, meeting more often, meeting in person, but they have some unique challenges. A lot of churches have kind of let maintenance slip on buildings. I know we've financed a lot of new roofs, a lot of new HVAC units and things like that. But there's also churches, an example, in fact, Bert brought this to our attention. There are a lot of churches that are either still primarily streaming their services and other events and meetings, others that are at least going to continue doing that for the foreseeable future. And a lot of them aren't very well equipped to do that. And so we're kind of starting to work with churches on enhancing their technology to be able to offer streaming services to their members. So if there's any way we can help you or your church, we would love to do that. You can call me directly, contact me, email me. Our website is tumcu.org, and we hope that you'll take advantage of that. And I hope you're getting a lot out of this course with Bert. I know stewardship is a difficult topic in a lot of churches, and I hope you found that Bert has helped you with this a lot. So let us know if we can help, and thanks for the time, Bert.
Okay, Jim, thanks. And you're welcome to stay in, or you're welcome to head out. So thanks for stopping by this morning. Yeah, okay. What's that? Okay. Well, I do hope you are getting some ideas. Today, we're going to move quickly across several topics. And if you say, well, that may not concern my church today, it might concern your church down the road, or if you're a pastor, you may not see the need in your current church, but you will see the need in perhaps a next appointment. And I want to start with endowments. And those are pretty straightforward. How many of you have an endowment in your church? Do you have, I know Shannon Marie has one, Kiko has one. Well, and that's not good or bad to say I have it, I don't have it, but they're fairly easy to set up. Your conference foundation has a template. And I know in my conference, they will actually come to your church and meet with a group of interested people. and help you set up this endowment. The problem is, or the challenge is, you've got to schedule them to come because I don't think they're out, really beating the bushes, forcing themselves on churches to set up endowment plans. The nice thing about an endowment is it's one more income stream. It's not predictable like an annual campaign or a capital campaign, but when it does happen, at least my experience is it's not little money. It's sometimes nice size gifts, 25,000, 10,000, 100, 500. You don't know because there's a good chance it's in someone's estate plan. They are leaving the church X dollars because of what the church has meant to them over the years. And so when you are settling an estate, or when the executor is settling an estate, they could have fairly substantial assets, and some of those assets could be given to the church. So without an endowment plan, you still may get something from somebody upon their passing that you weren't expecting, but you don't have the vessel yet to accept it, put it to use. You really have to then put everybody together and say, what are we going to do with this $10,000? Do we save it? Do we spend it? Do we put it in the general fund? Do we do this? Do we do that? An endowment helps make these decisions in advance. It says that estate gifts will go to the Oak Grove United Methodist Church Endowment Fund to be used according to the way this is set up. Now, the donor may have some other ideas there, and then you can take those on a case-by-case basis. But essentially, an endowment is a fund of money that generates interest and dividends, and the church then has access to those interest and dividends on a yearly basis. And they can do whatever they've decided to do. I think the rule also is that a church can also have access to 5% of the value of the endowment per year, so that it just doesn't sit there forever. You'll have a little more money to work with. Now, you need to check your own with your foundation to make sure I'm correct on that. I think that's the way it was here in my conference. And I like that too, because that means that you have a little extra money to do whatever it is you're going to do. If this endowment document is set up, then there's a good chance the categories are pretty straightforward. People like to leave money for the building fund. People like to leave money for the pipe organ. They like to leave money for the cemetery. They like to leave money for missions. They like to leave money for scholarships. There may be other unique situations, but in general, those 5 are what people tend to leave money to: building and maintenance, scholarships, mission, other more specific things, cemeteries, whatever you might have there that they want to see go on after their death. So they are really giving you the sum total of many years of annual giving in one lump sum upon their passing. So an endowment is worth having, even if you say, we're just a little church. I might have mentioned to you on day one, I know of a little church that's been around 68 years and doesn't have a penny in endowment because it never set one up. I suspect that somebody would have remembered them in their estate plan if they knew that the church was willing to receive a sum of money upon their death. So I would ask you all, if your church doesn't have one, maybe if you could be the game changer at your church and go ahead and get that set up. It doesn't have to be funded with anything. It's your internal document. It's not, to my knowledge, it's not filed with the court. The conference is not there to enforce it. It is an agreement among yourselves how this kind of fund will be used over the course of time. And it can be amended at your charge conference. The last church I pastored, we had major amendments to our endowment fund because the money was not going anywhere. The original categories that we had set up long before my arrival were no longer relevant. And so we amended the categories so that a sense of relevance and a sense of nowness would be useful to that endowment fund. So I think it's a good thing. That would be on the pro side of endowment. Just kind of going back and forth on the con side is sometimes that money never gets touched. It just sits there and sits there year after year after year. And the categories were so tightly written that no one qualifies for it. I'll give you a real example. A church I worked with had a category that was set up for nursing scholarships, permanent endowment. Someone had given $50,000 and the church said, yes, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. Well, over the course of the life of that $50,000, how many nursing scholarships do you think they gave? None, because it was such a narrow written line item in their endowment. And there's nothing wrong with the nursing scholarship. If we had had nursing students, I would have loved to have seen that. But it was written so tight that no one ever qualified for it. So in an endowment, you really have to give yourself kind of a safety valve, an outlet valve on the category so that someone can put that money to good use, to use in ministry. So the solution to the nursing scholarship was this, and I thought this was brilliant. It says that the Jan Sumter Nursing Scholarship Fund was given in loving memory of Jan Sumter, whose career was in the nursing profession. Okay, we need to know where this came from, so that's the narrative. A scholarship will be awarded to a up-and-coming nursing student at a local college or hospital or wherever that certification program might be. In the event that no nursing scholarship is awarded, the scholarship will be given to any rising, degree-seeking member of our church. You see how it just opened it wide open. It kept it in its original intent, but then it said if there's no one that applies for it, then we're going to open this up and let others who are pursuing a legitimate field of study have access to that funds. I think all of them, that are written like that do need to have a second level of usage so that that money just doesn't sit and gather dust until the end of eternity. We're putting that money to work, we're making it happen. The second thing that I would encourage, if you have an endowment, is this. It needs to be marketed. In other words, some churches have endowments and nobody remembers them because they've just been in a bank account somewhere or in a brokerage account somewhere, or they've been in a conference. The conference has been investing them. And they end up managing the endowment by looking at the monthly statement and saying, oh, we made money, we didn't make money. Well, we might make more money over here in this investment, or we might make it over here in this investment. That's one part of an endowment, is managing it, and that's due diligence. But marketing it is where it grows, by having other people participate in it as the time goes on. So the marketing or the communication element of it is absolutely essential to make sure the congregation knows that we have an endowment program. And it wouldn't hurt to just keep that in the bulletin or the newsletter forever as a little box that says, the The First Church Endowment Program provides ministry funds to very important ministries. If you would like more information, please call the church office, or please call the pastor, or please call the finance chair, and they will help you, with your estate plan to make sure the church is taken care of. And that keeps it in front of you. It's not a big job, but anything that is not visible to the congregation on a regular basis tends to get lost. And I'm going to tell you that when we move to capital campaigns, how easy a capital fund can get lost in the general fund. So you have to make sure that you keep those out right there. Do you have any questions about that? That's just, to me, those are just some things, some potholes to avoid in an endowment program. So I'll take a couple of questions if you have any thoughts there. So, okay, well, in general, I think the endowment is a good thing, but it's got to be a living document that's actually breathing and walking and talking and has hands. If it doesn't, it's nothing more than a CD getting 0.0, and Jim Eads would know, 0.01 nothing percent. And we want this thing to make a ministry difference. Okay, well, we're going to cover these topics quickly. All right. The second thing when it comes to capital is that I have worked with some churches that don't even know what they have. They don't know. They're interested in making some capital improvements, and you sit at the table and someone will say, oh, don't you remember that fund that such and such gave us undesignated? We'd forgotten about that. Or one church I worked with said, we own an empty lot that was given to us 30 years ago. It's over there somewhere. We don't know how much it's worth. Now that I think about it, maybe we should look at that. So when it comes to capital funding, I think it's important to see what you already have and make a list and make sure that list includes everything that this church might actually turn into cash before they borrow money, before they have a capital campaign. So I'm a proponent of turning unused assets into cash for ministry, not just to hold on to them forever as they sit there and are forgotten. Many churches right now, one of the strategies I would see for some of our smaller churches is they may need to sell some of their unused assets. They've got too much land, they've got too much church building, they've got too many, vans sitting out there. They've got, they've accumulated this stuff. It's like living in a house for 30 years. You look around and you say, where did all this stuff come from? And they may need to go ahead and have a church yard sale and move some of this stuff out. I know of a church now that has about 15 acres, and they're going to go ahead and sell about 10 of those acres, because when they bought all of that, the sky was the limit. We were going to build mega churches on every corner. And so they bought 15 acres, but that day is gone as far as we can tell. So they're going to take that money and put it into improving the 5 acres and the facility that they have. So I think that's a smart move. And if that day comes back that they need 15 acres, then we'll go straight to Jesus to see what the answer to that one is, because I don't see that coming anytime soon. Another church I worked with had forgotten about that $50,000 CD. Forgotten about it. Didn't even appear on the income statement or the monthly statement. So I would suggest that the church always know what its assets are, where they're located, and who needs to kind of follow up on them to make sure everything's in order in case we want to cash them out, so to speak, or sell it, or whatever we want to do, so we can have money to move the 20 1922 ministry forward, not the 1937 ministry or the 1954 ministry, whenever these things started. I also want to make a comment that if somebody is giving your church cemetery plots somewhere, I had the misfortune of at least 3 churches being pastor that had donated cemetery plots to them for whatever reason. And guess what happened when we tried to sell them? Nobody wanted them. Even the cemetery wouldn't buy them back at pennies on the dollar. Had no need for them for a couple of reasons. The cemetery wants to sell its own new plots. It doesn't want to have to resell old plots. It's already got the money for that. And the second most pressing reason is now 50, 60, 70% of people go through cremation. They don't need a full-size cemetery plot anymore. So they really are not valuable as an asset to sell to somebody. So if you've got those, put 0 on their value when you're adding up your assets. There, you might get something for them, but in general, probably not. The effort to sell them is probably going to cost you more than what you get out of them. And anything else that someone has donated, maybe someone came in and donated a car and said, we want to give you this car, and you didn't know what to do. Well, my suggestion, take it today to CarMax and sell it, get your check by 5 o'clock on that. These kinds of things just tend to lose value quickly, and they take up precious ministry time. I would also say the same thing when people give you stocks and bonds as donations. Maybe they're paying their annual campaign, maybe they're giving it to their capital campaign, or maybe it's just something one gives to the church. I believe the church needs a policy that says sell it the same day. Just sell it. As soon as it comes in, send it out. There really is not an advantage to trying to manage for the church to become stockbrokers too and try to figure this thing out. Because one, the donor is going to be upset if you hold it and it loses value, and then you sell it a month later, and all of a sudden the donor gets a receipt that says, for $8,500, whereas a month earlier he or she would have gotten a receipt for $10,000. So, I would say move that stuff out the day that you get it. You just have that policy. And if your church is like that, if that happens, then you need a brokerage account so that money goes, those stocks go straight into your brokerage account and then straight out. And then the cash, then you can take the cash and do what you want to with it. So those are some important tidbits when leading up to the capital campaign. But again, let me stop, let you take your breath. Any questions about any of that? I'm moving a mile a minute right now. Okay, you good? You taking it in? It's just part of what I have learned over the years. All right, then capital campaigns. Many churches have gone through capital campaigns. They've raised good funds to move forward. A capital campaign is a bricks and mortar campaign, bricks and mortar. It's not for mission. It's not for salaries. It's not to pay the monthly light bill. It is for really some tangible large asset, such as the building, such as the mortgage on the building, such as the maintenance, a large maintenance project on the building. So this is above and beyond money. A capital campaign is designed to create above and beyond your annual giving so that you have an extra cushion to work with. Because think about this, if people are just shifting their annual giving to the capital, then you've got less annual funds to work with if they're just shifting it from one to the next. So when a church does a capital campaign, they have to, at every at every available moment, say this is above and beyond your regular giving. This is second mile giving. This is next step giving, however you want to localize that term. Because otherwise it becomes a zero-sum game. You've just shifted this handful of funds over to this one, and now this one's empty. So there's no reason to undertake a capital funds campaign if you're just shifting the same amount of money in two directions. That's the number one. That's the number one key of going into a capital campaign, that it's money above and beyond your regular annual giving. Campaigns done professionally are really well organized, and the resources make good sense and logical sense, because the capital campaign process is pretty simple, and it's done the same way by everyone, at least the people I'm familiar with and the way I do them. It requires a calendar of activity and trigger points over the course of time. When I do a campaign, it lasts 16 weeks from start to finish. I can tell you when it starts, I can tell you when it finishes, and what you do all the way through those 16 weeks. And the first 4 weeks are nothing but preparation, getting fine-tuned as to what the church wants to do. Now, you can take these theories and use them yourself. I'm just talking about what I do. But one of the most important things to a capital campaign is called a case statement. And it's something like this. It has maybe 4 points to it. Pine Ridge United Methodist Church is undertaking a 36-month capital campaign to raise $500,000. Okay, capital campaign. How much are you going to raise? $500,000 to improve the sanctuary, the social hall, and the restrooms, to bring them up to code, et cetera, et cetera. All right, that's the specifics. That's what we're going to do with the money. When it's all said and done, I should see improvements in the kitchen. I should see improvements in the sanctuary. I should see improvements. I should see exactly what the church told me they were going to do with my money in the beginning. And then you conclude that with the reason your ministry is going to be more effective. We're going to improve that so that we can reach out to the community and offer them a place where they can grow, study, serve in years to come. You see, that's a case statement right there. And if you can't boil it down to that, then you're just saying, okay, folks, we got some needs around here. We want you to give some extra money. How successful? I mean, you'll get some. I give you a lot of experience. I know of a church that had the potential probably to raise $500,000. They decided to do it themselves, and they raised $100,000. They were happy. I didn't tell them not to be happy. You do what you do. But with a little organization, I think they could have raised 5 times that much. I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so I kept it to myself. But you have to ask your questions. If you're going to undertake something like this, you might as well make it as effective as you possibly can, and raise the money that you really can. Most capital campaigns that I'm seeing now are not new construction. I don't even see new construction anywhere. It's all building maintenance. And the year and a half that these buildings stayed dark did not help the heating and air units, did not help the roof, did not help the the lighting systems. It's like a car that sits in the driveway for a year. You're probably not going to start it right up and then get full effectiveness out of it. So a lot of churches kind of deteriorated at an accelerated rate during the pandemic. And now they're coming back, they're turning on the air for the first time, they're turning on heat for the first time, et cetera, et cetera. And they realize we can't postpone this maintenance any longer. We kept our fingers crossed that we could get another 2 years out of the systems, but that is probably hit the point of no return. So the churches that I'm seeing are raising money for mortgage and maintenance. It just seems like that's just what it is. There may be some out there that are so confident of the future that they're building new buildings, and that's good. They just haven't come to me yet. I haven't seen that. With that said, then there's 3 numbers that I think are good for churches to know and to figure this out. One is certainly what I would call capacity. Capacity. What is the potential of giving for that church? And this is an art, not a science. What is the capacity? The second number is what is the cost of the improvement, of the capital improvement? What is the cost? So you got capacity, you got the cost. And then the third number is your goal. What is your goal? So what we have to do is mix these 3, and then it will determine the goal. So here's something that's never going to work. I'm pretty sure it's never going to work. It'll never work. That a church says, we have $1 million in repairs, therefore our goal is $1 million. We'll just have the goal to meet or equal the cost. Well, that sounds fine, but you've left that capacity. Does the congregation have the capacity to raise $1 million? And that becomes a very important consideration. Let me give you a couple of other numbers. And I know this dull stuff, but this is the inner truth on this. If a church has a budget of $250,000, and let's say its total giving every year is $250,000, that's a long way from a goal of $1 million, is it not? When you're tracking $250,000, it's a long way. So your capacity is not going to be $1 million, even though the cost of the project was $1 million. You'd like the goal to be $1 million. Capacity says the fundraising goal is going to be less than what you think way up here. The numbers that we've used over the years is that a 3-year campaign will generate 1 to 2 times annual giving. So best case scenario in this church is that the goal could be $500,000. The goal would be $500,000 based on capacity. But now you've got the cost of $1 million, but your capacity is $500,000. All right, so we've got 2 good numbers now. And this is where you have to make a decision. Let's say you do raise the 500 and you want to go ahead with the $1 million of improvements. You're going to have to borrow the difference there. Then that's where you have to get a mortgage for $500,000. And then when you get a mortgage, you realize that this mortgage, I'm getting complex here. We're going to have to get our calculators out. This mortgage is going to be for 15 years, but the campaign is only for 36 months. So you've got an income stream coming in for 36 months, but you have committed now for another 12 years of mortgage payments. This is where you really got to look down the road to make sure you don't get overcommitted. So the suggestion would be then you're going to have to phase these capital projects. Maybe you do 500,000 worth in these 3 years, and then you have another capital campaign that'll take you 3 more years out, and then maybe you can finish up this project without going into tremendous debt. So there's some financial strategic decisions that you want to make. But ultimately, I think in all of these numbers, capacity is the number you want to keep your eye on, more so than just arbitrary goal or the cost of the project. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me just stop. It's taken me years to figure all of this out, but I've got it now, and I want to give it to you so you don't take years to figure it out. Okay. That's really the financial part of it. In order to make a capital campaign really effective, you do need somebody who is almost a project manager to make sure that everything is done according to the calendar, according to the plan. So it's going to be a lot of work for somebody in the congregation, and it shouldn't be the pastor having to be the quote project manager. It should be a shared team of laity. Pastor is absolutely essential, but I don't think the pastor is the one that needs to keep the calendar and needs to put the stamps on the mailers. I think that's a better effort there. Capital campaigns, and I'm going to move quickly because I don't know if you all got it. I'm going to do a full seminar on this at the end of the month on the capital campaign. So you may want to register for that. I'll have a little more detail on it. So the capital campaign is not a campaign of taking the cost and dividing it by the number of families. In other words, let's say our new AC unit that we're going to have to replace is $200,000 and we've got 100 families. Well, we'll just, ask everybody to give $2,000. Is that right? 2,000. That makes sense. All 100 families are then going to write a check for $2,000. How likely do you think that's going to happen when you're right. I see, Gary, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way. It's never going to happen. Never has happened. But we like to do it that way. And I'll tell you the reason it won't happen is because many people in the congregation have greater capacity personally. They could give 50,000. They could give 25. They could give 10. They could give 5. Many people in our congregation do not even have capacity for $2,000. They can't give it. They don't have it. It's not coming. And so what you have then is 50% of the people could have done better, and 50% of the people can't do it at all, or at least at not that level. So what you do in a capital campaign is you step the gift chart. And in my seminar, I'll show you what one it is, but you take something like the number 200,000 and you say, okay, one family needs to give 20,000. 2 families give 10. 4 families give 5. 20 families give 2,500. And you just level this thing down to where everybody finds an honest place, an honest giving level that will make them feel good about themselves and also help them participate in reaching the goal. So there might even be some gift levels of, we need 10 people to give $250 over the next 36 months. And so, I developed those charts, and those are really good charts because it says, it acknowledges up front that everybody's capacity is different. And we're not asking anybody to do anything that they can't do. So that's part of it. And then some other very important documents that you would pass out as part of the campaign. Well, let me stop there. That's enough on campaigns. If you do it, I think it's like a personal training program. You have to start, and you just have to kind of work yourself stronger and stronger and stronger to the point of the commitment. And that's the way that works. So do you have any questions? I do. I'm just moving as fast as I can, but I will slow down. Okay. No questions then. All right. Here's something you're not going to see, but if you see it, I want you to stay away from it. Is a bond campaign inside the church. This is an iffy thing, and it was real big in other denominations, and somehow it filtered over to us. Have you all ever heard of an internal bond campaign? Yes, no. If you haven't, it's a good chance you won't, but there will be somebody in the congregation when it comes to a capital campaign that says maybe we should have a bond campaign. And a bond campaign is nothing more than the process of individual members lending the church the value of bonds. And the church members then get the interest rather than some financial institution. But yet the church has to pay off the bonds back to the church member when they come due. The way these things get sold to a church is the idea that the church members, out of the goodness of their hearts, will then simply not request, they will donate the bond to the church, and the church won't have to pay them back. Well, I don't know how you can guarantee all 100 families are going to do that. And I don't think you can. And so I think the theory upon which this bond pyramid is built is pretty sketchy, in my opinion. Now, you'll find churches that have been very successful, not United Methodist perhaps, but again, this information will filter into you when you start having these conversations. But I would say keep any financial transaction as clean as you possibly can without dual relationships. Dual relationships mean the church members are funding the project, but then the church has to pay the church members back. That gets really tricky there. So I would say, just say, I bet that's good stuff, but I'll let you know if we need it. And then if you need it, you know where to find it. So bond campaigns, I'm not a big supporter of those. And finally, then we'll move into some small project funding. Let's say you don't even need a capital campaign, but you do need to say, maybe, as Jim mentioned, you really got to get your worship center up to speed technically. You're using old equipment, you're using donated equipment, nobody knows what to do with what you've got. You just really need to get equipment that is not breaking down on you and can be used to these standards. Well, in that case, you may want just some short-term financing from, say, the credit union or your bank or wherever. I'm talking $5,000, $10,000 little loans, improvement loans, and then pay those back according to whatever terms. So things like that, you may want to just go ahead and do some short-term borrowing and try to pay them back in 12 to 24 months. I wouldn't extend even the short term out too far. I'll tell you why. Because if you extend any debt out too far, the people who entered into that debt, may move. The pastor they may move, and the debt gets forgotten as to why we were paying this monthly payment. There's nobody around, perhaps, that remembers why we're doing it. So you want to pay this off pretty quickly. I still support the old-fashioned small dollar fundraising. If the church needs $1,000, then sure, have a spaghetti supper and raise yourself $1,000, and do it in one night and be ready to go ahead and do whatever you want to. If you need 5,000, maybe you're the type of church that a fish fry can generate 5,000. If so, then do it. That doesn't bother me. To have some small projects, you just don't want to have fish fries to pay for $1 million renovation. You'll be selling fish for a long time, I suspect. So you have to match. You got to match the fundraising activity with whatever the project you're trying to accomplish is, and be realistic about that. And then the one I like in small project funding is I just like to go get a benefactor. I like to catch somebody and like take somebody out for coffee or lunch who, has capacity and say, look, we appreciate what you're doing, and we're trying to get a new computer for the church office. It's $2,500. Wondering if you might be willing to get that computer for us. And they may say yes or no, or they may say, well, I can't do the whole 2,500, but I could do 1,500. Well, look, that's one less fish fry right there that you have to do, and they're ready to fund it. I just think of something I did as a pastor one time. We were supporting a mission to, I don't know, the Liberia. I just can't remember. And we had a representative come to church and tell us what their needs were. And they said, we need a new computer and printer for the office. We're using something, just with floppy disk drives, and that stuff from the 1980s. They're still using that. Well, we can't have that. We wouldn't allow one of our mission partners to have that. So I just stood up and I said, they need to get this computer for their office so they can do ministry. We need 2,500. I don't have time to count $1 bills and $5 bills. Whoever can write the check for 2,500, I'll be standing at the door. You just hand it to me and we got it. I had 3 people race to the door with the check. I only need 2,500, had 7,500 offered. You see, sometimes we just need to go ahead and not water down our needs, but say, this is what we need. And it would really help us if somebody here could take this on now and go ahead and make this happen right now. And you'd be surprised. There might be people who say, that's what I've been waiting for. I have $2,500 sitting around doing nothing. If this can improve the ministry there, I'm in. Count me in. So I think there are just a number of ways to raise some, small funds in the life of the church. Final point I want to make, and this is it about, I missed it on the mortgages. Lots of churches have mortgages, and this is a mistake, I think. I'm looking out the window and saying, this is a mistake. You have a capital campaign for a project, a big project, and a church I'm familiar with built an addition of some sort, probably around, I don't know what it was before 2000, well before 2000. And it was big, it was nice, it was, really good. And they kept remortgaging it. And there's nothing wrong with that, you get a better rate. But they never cut the term. They would have a 15-year term and they would refinance it for another 15-year term. So you never paid the thing off because you were just kind of, pushing it out there. And that's fine. When I did their capital campaign for them, it was for mortgage reduction. And I said, well, that's a capital line item. Where are you paying it? We're paying the mortgage out of the general fund. $7,500 a month out of the general fund to mortgage. And so what they had found out then is they had to reduce everything else, staff, programming, whatever, because the top priority of the budget was the mortgage. And 7,500 times 12 is not a small number in any size church. So what they made the decision a few years back that they were tired of capital campaigns. I can understand that. I've been there and done that. But here is what you get when you're tired of a capital campaign. You then put that into your general fund, and the total giving goes down. It goes down. It's just a natural consequence. And so you end up losing the entire stream of that ongoing capital fund, because now it's over here and the membership doesn't respond when you say, okay, we've merged these two together, therefore we're asking you to give the sum over here and the sum over here and put it together. It usually doesn't work. When you start hiding major expenses, and I'm not saying not being transparent, but it just becomes another line item in a general fund budget, people forget it. So the church I was working with said, this mortgage payment is killing us. We need a capital campaign so that we can, make the mortgage payments. So what we did is we had to pull that out of the general fund, set that as a goal over here, and have the campaign around that goal. I think it's going to work, but I think they could have paid off this mortgage a long time ago had they just had maybe one or two more capital campaigns and kept that thing going. So, I mean, live and learn. That's just the way it works. But I have learned over the years that I think a church should pay off its mortgage in 7 to 10 years before everyone has forgotten why that mortgage was taken out in the first place. So that is my rule of thumb. Let's get this thing done as soon as possible so that we can use our money, 100% of our money, for mission and ministry rather than mortgage payments. So those are just some things that I have learned along the way, and some things that I do when churches call me. So let me just stop. That's enough for me. Ask me some good questions that help me grow. How about that? Gary, are you raising your hand? Go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Yes, sir. I just want to throw out another leery. Don't rent a bus the year before COVID for 3 years.
Yes, there you go. Well, that hindsight is the only way you would have known that one. But yeah, that bus just set, didn't it?
And we have to make monthly payments, and you can't buy out the lease. The time we get done, the 3-year lease, we will pay for the bus about twice, and we haven't used it but 6 months.
I understand. Good advice. Let's be careful about the lease to start with, to make sure that's really what you want to do. And then if there's any economic things going on, be aware. Bus beware. There you go. Good point. Something else? Any other thoughts that we've generated? David, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, so I have a question. Just this is entirely what's your experience, what's your gut tell you? So one of the beautiful gifts of serving at Del Rey is that they have an incredible amount of rental income. So 75% of the church's budget comes from its rental income. And so we're able to section off, like, state very specifically, when you give, your money goes to this. And so we've been transitioning to the language we use around offering, that your gifts go to support the actual things that our church does, right? The ministries that we do, the ministries that the staff carries out, those kinds of things. And I was surprised to get a lot of critique about that, because people apparently like paying to keep the lights on. So what's your take on what motivates people to give to a church?
Well, I used to have a list of 14 things. I've narrowed it down to maybe 2. Well, certainly it's part of your spiritual growth and your discipleship. I think we might have to help people discover that for the first time, just as they discover their prayer life, as they discover their mission and service. So we may have to somehow gently help people understand that giving is just a sign of spiritual growth. It's a sign of, it's one of our values as disciples. And that's going to take time. It's going to take time. I know we had a question. Young people like to give to specific things. And barring a church building and property, we could do that 100% of the time if we didn't have overhead, so to speak. And so I think the future, if younger folks don't support bricks and mortar, which I'm almost at the point where I don't either, but it's our reality. I think we're going to have to change the face of the church to more nomadic space, more virtual space, perhaps home church, where it is going to require a lot more organization, but I think we can put 100% of our funds into the mission of the church. Does that help at all, David? I think the future is going to define that rather than the past. The past is probably behind us now with large church buildings and construction. So I think downsizing that part of our ministry is right on top of us right now. And you made a good point. I do think that rental income and all income is going to have to fund the total budget, because we are in probably unknown territory with new, younger disciples. They're coming in and they have learned what you do pretty well with crisis giving, with event giving, with, those kinds of things as they arise. But regular giving, monthly giving to the mission of the church, I think that is new territory, and we have to start where they are with that. We can't just assume that because we grew up that way or because we're in ministry or we're been around the church that anybody else has that at all in their understanding. So that's my unexpertise answer. So David, it sounds like, with the rental income and things like that, you're moving in that direction to put more of the giving toward the important things that your congregation has lifted up. So I applaud that. And we could talk about that offline, so to speak, too, if you want to have a personal conversation. I would welcome that. Yeah.
I had a quick question about.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned crisis giving. I guess it's not a quick question. How do you manage or do a crisis giving campaign?
That's probably not the right word. I'm talking maybe natural disaster around the world giving. Right now I'm seeing a lot of opportunity to give to Ukraine types of relief efforts. You'll see earthquake efforts, flood efforts. I think that's what I meant. Probably not crisis under the local church's roof so much, but around the world, I think people tend to give toward that. Tell me more about.
So I guess my question is what kind of campaign do you have when the church is literally in crisis and is in need? Especially when you have a small church and coming out of this pandemic season, a lot of the older people have not returned, and our churches were already older to begin with.
Yeah.
What do you do in those situations? And I suspect that maybe somebody had the same question and didn't want to ask it, but it is an issue for us.
Right.
it's more immediate than, and I'm getting ready to start the stewardship campaign because I think it makes a lot of sense to do it. And I'm going to start it on the 24th, but we have a more immediate issue with one of our churches. So how do we deal with that?
Well, I think if the first level is, how much do you really need to get to a certain point in the calendar? In other words, I need a real number that says this is what we need to make it to June 30th. And that puts that need in real terms rather than, kind of generalizing it and say, we are really hurting. We need you to give. You say, I don't even know what that means. I already know we're hurting, but tell me on the pain scale from 0 to 10, how bad we are hurting. And that's where you can put a dollar value on it. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually, it helps because I really didn't think about that.
Yeah. So I need to know, as a person in your congregation, where we are exactly and what do we need exactly to get to that particular point. If we can't get there, then we're going to have to start making some serious decisions about our financial health. And that could be some very easy decisions, or it could be the hard decisions that this church cannot sustain itself much longer, and needs to think about discontinuing ministry. I mean, that's the spectrum right there. Either we can correct the problem in the short term, or this is going to be an ongoing problem and we might need to talk about some more definitive solutions. I hope you don't have to go there, but I think a lot of our small churches didn't come out of the pandemic well, just like yours. And some of our large churches didn't come out well either. So, and I can talk to you more about it. One of the offers I make to all of you on this call is I'd be glad to talk to you personally by phone or by Zoom if I can help you think through your local circumstances and what's going on in your church. So that might be the best way to go. But Josette, I think we've got to get real clear with our people that we need $7,500 by June 30th to pay our bills. Not a penny less. So
I just wanted to know, because being new to these churches, I came in the pandemic because I started June 2019. And I barely had a year, and this is my first pastoral assignment anywhere. And so I honestly, they teach us a seminary, you spend a year observing. Well, I didn't get a real good first year of observing, in my opinion. And then not making any changes for 3. And now I can't afford to wait longer I can't afford to wait total 3 years. I had to start making some changes, and now it's been very difficult.
Yeah, your church is drowning in the pool, and you need to throw them a lifeline rather than sit and watch them for 3 years to see what they'll do.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mode we had to go into.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people were angered by the protocols set in place by the conference. And then, of course, the pastors become the bad guys, and then making it a real slow move coming out of that. People decided either they weren't coming back or they weren't giving. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know what you mean, and it may not be able to rebound. So I think you may have some strategies to get you to the end of the year, the end of December. But if it's just not going to be enough people, not enough able bodies who are able to, 1, finance the church, and 2, do the ministry of the church, then you don't have much to work with for the future, unfortunately. So I know what you're talking about, and I think that would be my short-term measure. What do we need to get to a certain point?
Thank you. I'll be reaching out to you offline too.
Sure. Good. Okay. Well, I want to offer that to all of you. Feel free.
I think Brian had a question.
Brian, you up in the corner of mine. Yeah, I see the hand. Go ahead, Brian. What's your question? Good to see you. Yeah. Up. Can't hear. No. Don't have any sound coming from Brian at the moment.
I think you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Good. Yes.
Very good. Yes. First off, thanks for the local vernacular to tell me some truths. It hurts a little less.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, can you run when you run your regular tithing and stewardship campaign, is that also the time to talk about legacy giving, or does that need to happen outside of congregational space or at a different time?
Well, I think you could do it either way. The thing about legacy giving is that's ongoing all the time, because it's going to generate funds at some unknown time when people pass or when they, want to give to the endowment. I prefer, I think, to have a campaign of any sort to stand alone so that we're not giving multiple messages. That would be my preference in an ideal world, that an annual campaign is an annual campaign, and we're not asking for prayers, presence, gifts, service, witness, legacy, Sunday school teachers, and nursery volunteers in the same campaign. We're just doing the annual campaign. Capital campaign, I feel kind of the same way. My experience has been is if you can do the capital campaign early in the year, you still can put enough space to the fall of the year to have your annual campaign to stay on track with all of this. That the year you have your capital, you don't avoid the annual. And then I think January is a good time to talk a little bit about legacy, because as people make their New Year's resolutions, that's a good time to update your will and your estate plan in January, because a lot of people, will say, well, I need to get around to this in January. I'm going to gym in January. I'm going to update my will in January. Just help them remember what it is that they would like to do. Maybe have a couple of Sundays of just talking about the legacy of the church and how they can be part of it. And I'm sure the foundation will have some paperwork that they would provide you to hand out that time. So I think, Brian, that would be another standalone and would probably get more people's attention. Excellent question. Yes. I like these questions. Good. Anything else? Anybody else got a good question? Now, I will close, or try to close with this. If you were going to do a capital campaign and an annual campaign, say, in the same season, and you just wanted to do it once, like in the fall, this would be my suggestion. You do a full-blown capital campaign, but on the commitment card, there are two blanks. Blank one is your annual commitment for next year. Blank two is your 3-year capital commitment. The reason that's good is because they can see that they've just separated out these two giving streams. And hopefully the sum total of those two is going to be greater than what the annual giving would have normally been. So that's where you get your above and beyond. I just piggyback those right on top of each other if you wanted to do them at the same time. But you still really, 99% of your communication is about this capital campaign. Lots of ways to do it. Talk to me and I'll help you come up with your best strategy to raise $100 or raise $1 million or 10 million, whichever you need at your church. If it's $100, let's have a car wash. If it's 10 million, let's get to work now. So we've got a long way to go there. All right, then. Well, thanks, everybody. I I do want to give the CEU credit to anybody that wants it and has at least hung in here for three sessions. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just email me in the next hour and say, Bert, I have gotten so much out of this class. It has been life-changing, game-changing. I don't even know if I could have gone on until I took this class, and I'll send you a 0.5 CEU. And and then you let me know when we can talk. How about that? We good? Did I answer any questions? You got the link to the, is this the link to the capital campaign, David, that you've sent out, the capital campaign seminar, or is this, okay. Brian, you got it? Okay. All right. Well, blessings to your Holy Week. And I hope it all is well and that we celebrate Easter in a big, big way come a week from Sunday. So, all right then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye. Yeah.